Blurred and blended cheeks are quite the hot topic at the minute, and it's also something that I see a lot of people struggle with. Grab a snack, lock in, sit down, because it's time for a tutorial. Welcome to my first official long form content. Welcome. Have a seat, pull up a chair for your attention span. I know she can't sit still. Considering this is my first long form video, you are almost certainly not subscribed, so make sure you double check. Okay, so cheeks. Blush, bronzer, contour, highlighter, over powder, under creams, over creams. There's a lot going on in the land of cheeks. Let's break it down. Contour and highlight, light and shade. This is about your shadow and your sculpting. Contour is a bit of a hot word. It traditionally means something that is more cool tone. It's going to be a shadow. It's for sculpting. Think really snatched cheekbones, like something with a big shadow. That is contour. Highlight is the light part of that shadow. So wherever we place anything lighter is going to come forward on the skin, and it is in contrast to the shadow. The higher the contrast, the bigger the difference, the more dramatic. Now, blush and bronzer, I personally like to describe as the life of makeup. It's where your personal style can shine through, and it literally adds the life back into your skin because it mimics the blood flow and also where the sun hits on your face. Think tan and freckles, aka life. Now, all of them are ultimately sculpting, not just contour and highlight. Bronzer and blush also create shape because they are not your skin tone. So they don't blend into your skin, they create shape. There are many nuances, especially with bronzer and contour, and depending on skin tone and texture, and you know, if you want something glowy or matte and things like that. But we are going to keep it simple today. If you have any questions, drop them in the comments and I will try and answer them. I am going to do my best to keep it simple because let's be real, the biggest challenge is where to place the products so you don't end up looking like a big Neapolitan mess. Let's get started. Roll the footage. Alright, well, we're going to keep it user-friendly today. Foundation and brows are done. I have used this brush for foundation. We're going to put her aside. Remember this, she's important. Now, I said that there were nuances and little specifics about sculpting, but we're going to keep it simple. Girl, decide. Well, we do have such a thing in the color spectrum called neutrals, which is what we're going to use for our sculpting today. This is a well-loved sculpting palette of mine, and as we can see, she's got some warmth, but there is also like an ultimate little greyness to it. It's not completely orangey warmness, but it's also not super grey. It's a nice in-between. This is what we're going to use today. If you're familiar with my videos, you know where this is going. Back of the hand first, always. You just get more control. I don't make the rules. Well, maybe I do make the rules. This is my only rule. You can always add more product, but good luck trying to take it off once it's already on. Before we go in, let's talk placement. Everyone's face is the same when it comes to bone structure. Your ears, your nose, your mouth, your eyes, they'll all kind of align in a nice beautiful way to show you where your cheekbones are. You will also literally be able to feel your bone structure when you're putting on your skincare, but that is some homework for you to do later. This little triangle is where we're going to be putting the majority of our sculpting products, because if I move my light, this is where shadows fall. Back to the application. We're going to do little tap tap taps, never swiping, you'll make a mess, to slowly start to build up product, and we're not bringing this too far down. Start small. It is also helpful to start thinking of blending upwards rather than dragging down if we want a more lifted look. We are going to be putting other products here, so you don't have to worry about blending it out too much. Mostly just focus on the placement for now. I'm also going to bring this up onto the temple, and also a little bit on the forehead as well, because this is where the sun naturally catches, so it would be weird if there was no colour right up here. I also like to bring my forehead a little bit in as well. We're also now going to grab a smaller brush and use this on the shadows of our nose. Again, where the shadows naturally fall. This is where we are going to further put anything for sculpting. And then with the nose, so we don't have like a weird long, just like a big blob of line, I do like to just drag it down a little bit, just so it's not super harsh. Maybe catch a little bit under the nose where the shadow falls, but we want the majority to be right here. If you really want to pop out your lip, you can also pop whatever's left on the brush just under here. Don't go crazy because it will look silly, but it can really help with the bottom lip just kind of looking real juicy. Now for the sake of simplicity, I'm using a brighter concealer to get the coverage part of concealer, but also the highlight part of sculpting as well. It is good to note the brighter you go with the concealer, the more dramatic the difference will be between your highlight and your contour, so it's going to give a stronger look. Most people, in my experience, 1 to 2 shades brighter at most. And we're going hand first, as always, different section to where we put our contour, but hand first, and then we're going to place this on the areas that we want to come forward and also be a little bit brighter for that sculpting and contrast. So under the eyes, center of the chin, center of the forehead, and also this is nice, this has a slightly bigger side, that's why I love this brush. You can also pop her under the cheekbone, like you can see how that's just really popped out the sculpting that we did in comparison. So I'm going to pop a little bit there, slowly start tapping and blending things out. You can also, with the under eye concealer, we want to pop this right next to where we put that little shadow. Bring this slightly over the eye as well to help kind of open up the eye. And then we want to blend her out. You can also, if you like sort of really more of a lifted look, on the outside of the eye, because then we're also creating contrast on both sides of the cheekbone. And I'm really not using too much product, like that was one little pickle of concealer and we have used that over our entire face. Now remember this foundation brush? This is where she's going to come in. We're going to use whatever was left. I'm going to use the slightly more dense side to blend out just like any little differences between the products, especially down here. Probably going to use the more fluffy side, just so it's not like and around the forehead. I often find this very helpful to get things nice and seamless as well. And because this has a little bit of the foundation still left on it, everything's kind of just like blending together. You can even run this over the nose, over the eyes, and we're just tapping still. Now that we've got a grasp on our kind of general sculpting, we can reassess and decide if we want any areas to be stronger or if we need to blend anything out. For me, I always like to go back in, no more product, but just redefine those cheeks a little bit, particularly in that little corner where I like to have it a bit stronger. Make sure everything's blended out in the hairline. Make sure I didn't completely diffuse everything on the nose. But if you want to, if you're like, no, I didn't go in heavy enough the first time, you can go and you can add a little bit more now. Now we look snatched, but a little bit dead. So it's time for blush. Because we had our more neutral sculpting, I'm not going to go in with a cream bronzer. We're going to deal with bronzer later. So we're going to go in with blush first. Same thing as always, hand first. And this time I'm putting the blush in between our sculpting and our highlight. I am very lazy, so I'm using the same brush, getting this nice and evenly coated. And because I prefer more of that sort of lifted look, I'm going to pop this basically straight over the top of, but a little bit higher than our sculpted look, and then start to bring it over the cheekbone. If you prefer kind of more of a youthful rosy look, you might like to bring it a little bit more center of the face, but I prefer for my cheekbones, I feel like it suits me to have it a little bit higher. Blush is very much up to you. More, less, no blush. I mean, I think everybody needs some type of blush, but the color of blush is very personal. I also like to bring this up and kind of blend her in with what we did up here. Some people enjoy a little bit on the nose for a sun-kissed look as well. And then the same thing that we did out with our foundation brush, we're going to do with our concealer and just re-blend any of those bits under the eye, just to make sure that there's no harsh lines. We're not adding any more product. We are simply using what is already here to blend out our canvas. Now the fun extra behind this is, if you want to, you can mix what you've got together on your hand to create transition shades. If you really are struggling with blending out and getting a seamless look, you can use this to help have everything be nice and cohesive because by blending and mixing on here, we have created some beautiful in-between shades to help everything mix together. Now, if you don't like where your creams are, you're not going to like it with powders over the top. So make sure you're happy with this step before you move on. To setting, again, to keep it simple, we are using a no color translucent powder. She's just setting and blurring, nothing else. You can use different shades of powder to kind of match what you've done on the face. Sometimes I have been known to do that, like use a powder foundation to further sculpt and then a brighter powder to further brighten under the eye. That is not the point of today. Today we're keeping it simple, so we're going with the no color powder. Now, I have talked about the tap and roll before. If you do not know what I'm talking about, you need to go watch my other videos. I am not talking about it today, but we are going to put the majority of our powder where we want to put our other powder products. So we're setting everything down nicely, and then with whatever is left on the brush, maybe a little bit more, we will dust over where we just need things to be set. Personally, I like to focus on sculpting with creams and getting warmth with powders, just because I feel like it's more natural. Like the sculpting and the bone structure and the shadows comes from underneath, and then the bronze and the sun-kissed is dusted on top. With powder application, the reason that these brushes are more fluffy is to capture the high points of the face and almost dust product over the skin, rather than something like a more dense brush, which is really, it's gonna put product where you want it. This is like more fluffy, more light, more airy. So we're gonna coat our brush evenly. Sometimes I'm a bit lazy to use my hand, so I use the lid of a product before we really kind of, yes, reinforce our sculpting, because layers equals lasting, but also this is a more bronzy color. So we're using this to hit the high points of the face where the sun would naturally hit, and we're blending everything out. I also like to move my hair out of the way, because there is nothing worse than a moon face. And because we're not being too heavy with this sort of product, we're thinking about it as like that dusting and blending tool, rather than like an extra heavy layer on top. Everything is kind of designed to blend together and just, it's a bit softer. We're also going to mimic what we did on the nose as well. This, I feel like, because we're using a smaller, more eyeshadow brush, you can be a little bit more dense with on the eyes. Start any eyeshadows that you're doing, blend out your existing eyeshadow look to get a cohesion, create an eyeshadow look. And if we're doing the eyes, I didn't do this with creams because it can look too heavy, but on the tip of the brush, I'm also going to pop this just on the outer corner underneath the eye as well, just to help it be cohesive. And we're going to do the same thing with blush that we've just done. Dust it over the top. Powder blushes, I feel from experience, can be really quite pigmented, so go in light-handed. You can always add more. I speak from experience. Blush blindness is a real thing. The joys of a double-ended brush is we are now going to use no extra product, but whatever powder is left on our powder brush or powder side of the brush, to blend out that same layer, exactly the same that we did with our foundation brush earlier. It's the same principle. We're blending everything out. If you really want to, you can grab some extra product, re-sculpt under that cheek, reinforce a brighter under eye if that's what you want. You know, let's do that for fun. Get a little bit of extra powder. And maybe a slightly smaller brush for under the eye, just because that one is a bit big. And we can reinforce especially this little pop under the eye. We can be really specific with our cheekbones if we want to, or if you get any particular creasing or anything like that. She's just a little bit more snatched than this side. If seamless is the goal, you have to go back and forth. It's not going to happen with one product, one brush in 2 seconds. It takes time. I'm sorry. Now, although we've got a little bit of a soft radiance from some of the other products that we're using, she's looking a little bit flat. This is where our radiant products are going to come in. These are going to go on the absolute highest points of the face and the area that we want sometimes a little bit of sparkle, but also just like that luminosity to come in. My favorite hacks, and I do this all the time with customers at work, is I get a phone torch and you can literally see exactly where the luminosity on your face will go. Your face will tell you. A smaller brush so we can be precise. Blending it. Look, you can literally see that I blend this out on the lid all the time because the mirror is gone. And then we're going to pop her where we want the glow to come from. A little bit on the nose. Sometimes people go way overboard on the nose and then they just end up looking oily. Go light on the nose. You can also run this pretty liberally over the lid from my experience. Especially, this is quite a soft highlighter. I'm not going with something super crazy. So I can be a little bit more liberal with this, kind of in terms of where I'm placing it. But you can also use something a little bit smaller. Pack it on a little bit more denser. I like to do that on the inner corner because I like sparkles. Same thing as before. If we want to add anything, now is the time. I feel like on camera this is reading quite soft, but in person, trust me, the blush is there. I feel like it's not showing up on camera at all. So maybe for the sake of this, I might add some more. But also, sometimes with highlighters, I feel like it is helpful to go out and blend them out again so you don't end up with like a... But now, if we're done, it's time to add the finishing touches. And you're done. Not a line in sight. Hopefully this was helpful. I am on a mission to make artistry and education of makeup accessible and actually understandable, because makeup is complicated apparently for just no good reason. Don't forget to comment any questions, and you should let me know what our next tutorial should be. Have a good day, everyone.